Hi, so this is the next video for chapter 2. And after in chapter 1, we figured that out, kind of like get some big picture about what operations and supply chain management is. And for the chapter 2, still like want to help you to get more sense about what it is, but we focus on strategy. So for chapter 2, it has it is also divided into four parts. And the first part, I will give you introduction about the operation supply chain strategy, what it is, and the main activities, the one of the very important stuffs like we need to think about when we develop the strategy, which is the competitive dimensions. Then we move to the second strategy, which is risk strategy, and the third one, system strategy. And then the last part for chapter 2 is the productivity. So productivity is an important factor we need to consider about when we develop the strategy, when we manage the operation supply chains. This next video actually we will focus most of the time on the first part and the last part about how to do the calculations of productivity. So let's take a look about what operation supply chain management is. It's actually kind of a setting of the policies and plans that get the operations, that get the use of the resources needed by the firm or the company and to implement the corporate strategy. So this is kind of like the one sentence is to describe it, but if I use a brief way to describe what operation strategy is actually just give you an overall direction about what you are going to do. So you need to have a clear ideas about what products you like to make, and as well as like what is your strength and or what kinds of services you like to provide to customers and so on. So the corporate strategies actually provides that overall direction for you. And you also need to work with other, like you need to integrate all the goals and the plans to a more detailed projects as well. And it can be viewed as part of planning process. So in chapter 1, we talks about what effectiveness is. It means like doing the right things with the lower cost. And here when we focus on operations effectiveness, it's also the similar thing. So we wanted to just do a better performance with a minimal cost. So we want to do the right things. And this slides actually gave you the three main process we need to go through to develop the operation supply chain strategy. So the first process is about the strategic analysis. So you need to define the vision, mission, you need to define the overall direction. You need to take a look with what kinds of strength you have, which means like you need to make sure like you have a clear idea about how to step out for your competitors, then your customer will buy the products or the services for you. And then we move to the second main processes, which is the initiatives. And the initiatives is kind of just give you a lot of like the ideas to about how to make the changes. Like you may need to think about like if the vendor changes, if the supply chain stuff changes, if the materials oversteps, if how about the production process stuff. So you just need to take a look at the product change, the operation supply chain change. And then once you figure these two things out, you will be able to move to the third main process, which is kind of the specific projects. So you probably need to have a more detailed plan about like what kinds of resources you need, what kinds of the people you may need to hire, which materials you need to buy, and which is your best suppliers. Then you just need to implement those projects, those specific project plans. So this is based on the OSC strategy. This is what we have, like the three main process. So the strategic analysis initiatives and implement projects. And when every like we mentioned strategy is actually kind of yearly based. It's not we're not talking about like the short term. We talk about the long term stuffs. And this for these slides, the following few slides I just like to give to you one of the important things like we need to develop the strategy like when we consider about like what is the overall direction here. So you need to define your competitive priorities. And in general, we have a few aspects of the competitive priorities like you can consider about some companies like they feel like they could provide a lower price to customers, so cost probably their strength, their competitive priorities, which help them to stand out for their competitors. Some companies like the Nonex, the BMW, Mercedes, they prefer to just provide a high quality products to customers. So quality, probably the high quality probably the competitive priorities for them. And some companies, they just treat the delivery will be their strength. So when they develop the street strategy, they feel like they need to focus on how to make sure they can provide like the on-time delivery or they can improve their delivery speeds to customers, that they will or more customers. And sometimes like the companies feel like they are so flexible, which means like they have a high degree of agility to change the volumes. So when the demand changes, they will earn that orders rather than the competitors, as well as like they keep doing innovation to make sure like just like Apple company, they introduce the new iPhone every year, so to make sure they keep attracting their customers. So this is like all the competitive dimensions like we can consider about to our strategy, our companies when we develop the strategies. And these slides, except for those main aspects, we also have another one, like another criteria we call the support. The supporting, like including like the supplier, the technical support, the meeting launch date, and the after sale supporting, even like we talks about the environmental, the sustainability, and other dimensions. And for these slides, you need to be very careful about the first supporting. So the first supporting means like this is actually during the NPD, which means new product development stage. So your supplier may provide the suggestions of and thoughts or other ideas about like the materials you may need to use, because the suppliers know their materials best. So they when you want to design a new product and you want to choose like which one, even like your engineering people will give you some like ideas about that, but the suppliers for the supply sites, they will also provide some like the supporting to you, like to help you to design a really great new product here. So this is like what does mean the technical support here. So the first one. And in order to help you to have a better understanding of those different like the competitive priorities, actually we have five of them, five different aspects. So I provide you the several, I mean the following several slides to help you to have a better understanding. So the first dimension is the cost. This is actually a table which gave you like the competitive priorities and as well as the definition of them and the consideration like what kinds of like the things you need to consider when you develop the strategy, as well as the examples. So the first dimension is the cost, and when we mention the cost, we prefer to like we wanted to see if we could provide a lower price. If we can reduce our cost, we can provide a lower price to customers, so which helps us to attract more customers. The customer will buy from us, not others. And then the quality, when we talks about quality, we talks about two different types of quality: the top quality, like the Rolex, the watch, and the BMW, Mercedes, the car industries I just mentioned. And as well as we also talks about the consistent quality, like the McDonald's. So they just keep like produce the quality products to customers, and the customer can expect what they buy for McDonald's. So whenever they order the foods like the sandwich or the potato fries, they probably will expect what kinds of items they may have, and this is also could be one of the strengths like for you to attract customers. Then, except for cost and quality, we also have delivery. So delivery, just like I mentioned, the on-time delivery or the delivery speed, as well as the innovation. So when we talk about the innovation, we talk about the product innovation, just like Apple company, as well as the process innovation, like the Walmart and the Dell. So Dell is really famous about its computers, but actually Dell has a lot of patents which help them to earn a lot of like the profits and help them to make money. So this is about the the innovation. And the last one is about agility. So agility, we have three aspects, like the volumes. So based on the change of the demand, as well as like the options the you can provide to the customers, like the Amazon, you can just find like even just search for like the study desk, you probably will have like hundreds different like choices over there. So this is kind of like the variety agility customers, as well as the customization like the wedding planning and others. So this is kind of like, I just hope those slides can help you to have a better understanding about those 5 competitive priorities dimensions. Okay. And once you figure this out, we probably will be able to, we probably like think about, okay, so we know the customers wants the high quality, no cost. They wanted to have a fast speed delivery, on time delivery. They prefer they have more choices like about the features like the counters, the size and others. They also like wanted to just like get the innovations like stuffs over there. How about like we just meet all the requirements for them? If you can do that, they're really great. But unfortunately, actually, so it is really hard for you to satisfy the customer for every aspects of the competitive priorities or every aspects of the features or the factors they care about. For example, if you want to provide a high quality products, which means you probably need to spend more money on design it. You probably need to spend more money on buying materials. Then your cost will increases, and your cost increases, then the price increases. So you cannot like provide a low price with a high quality. I mean the top quality, like the products is really hard. So most of the situation, like when we develop the strategy about the overall direction for our firm, we just need to consider about some trade-offs. What is the most important for you? So the product you are planning to produce, you should just like care about the delivery most, or flexibility most, or the quality most, or the kind of like the price most. So this is always the things we need to consider about the trade-off. Then we have kind of the different ways to help you to develop it. So the historical view, it means like if you the cost the quality, it's really hard for you to just like improve both of them at the same time, because if you improve the quality, it's more money, then the cost probably increases. This is actually kind of the past view. So in the past, this is like most managers when they develop the strategy in terms of the competitive priority, this is what they think about. But nowadays we know that we can do them. We can like even the prices a little bit increases, but the quality increases are not as well. This is like the modern view. Is all the dimensions here could be like a wheel. So when you improve the quantity, you reduce the costs. For example, like the lean operations, it helps you to redesign the whole process. It helps you to reduce the waste. And then you will be able to just like improve the quality at the same time because you reduce the waste. So you probably will be able to save money as well. So you can save money, you can improve the quality at the same time. So you just like more like a whale here. And another things I'd like to introduce for you in terms of the first part here is about the terms, order winners, order qualifiers, and order losers. So this slide gave you the definition about what order qualifiers, order winners is. Actually, we have another terms we call order losers. So what they are? Order qualifiers means you have the ticket to enter into the market. So considering those different value dimensions like the cost, the quantity, the innovation, and others, so you can produce a qualified products and you have the ticket to enter into the market, which means the customer who need this product, they may buy for you or may buy for your competitors because the products you produce just like satisfy the requirements for the customers, but nothing standing out. Nothing's outstanding. So they may choose you, they may not choose you, but you still, you can enter into the market because you produce their products in a feasible way. And this is what we call the qualifiers. You have the ticket to enter into the market. But what if except for you just provide the similar things to the customers but with a lower price, then even except for you have the tickets enter into the market, you also will win the customers. So the customer will choose you, not your competitors, because the similar products with lower price. Then this is what we call order winner. And the order losers means you don't even have the ticket to enter into the market. You have the kind of standard quality over there, but you cannot reduce the cost, so your price is always higher than others. Then customers will not buy from you. So this is the order losers. And those three terms, this is all of the things I'd like to introduce to you for the first part. The second and the third parts actually relates to two different strategies. So the risk strategy means how you face the uncertainties in the environment. First thing you need to figure out is the definition here, and the second thing you need to figure out is the two different types of the risk you may meet. So one of them is supply chain changes, the supply chain risk. Another is the disruption risk, which are caused by the natural, the earthquakes or pandemics or others. So this is what the two things you need to figure out. The next things relates to risk strategy is about the general steps you can follow to mitigation the risk. So first of all, you need to define it. You need to identify which types of the risk you are facing or you may face later. And the second, you need to figure out the potential impact. So what kinds of impacts it may bring to you. Then the last step, just make a plan, control it, make a strategy to reduce it, reduce the risk, the impact the risk may bring to you. And the following two slides give you some examples about what kind of mitigation strategies you have to different types of the risk. So for example, the natural disaster, then this is what you can do. And whereas the second slide, they just give you all the the examples here. So after watching these videos, you may need to spend some time to take a look at all of them, because on the test you may meet like several multiple choices problems, I gave you a risk example and ask you what kinds of like the strategy you may have to just reduce the impact. Okay, so this is the risk strategy. Now let's talk about sustainable strategy. So first of all, you also need to figure out what does it mean. And because it mentions like it's kind of like the strategy about how to create and sustain values for its current shareholders. So you also need to figure out the differences between these two terms, the shareholders and the stakeholder. And then another thing here we like to emphasize is here the triple bottom line. So this is expand of this sustainable strategy. So we consider three things. It's called triple. So three things here. We consider the social responsibility, economic prosperity, and the environmental stuffs over there. So this is what we call the triple bottom line. So you may need to go back to the textbook and to read more details about this triple bottom line. And this is all of the things I need to introduce for you in terms of the sustainability strategy. So the last part is actually the calculation part for chapter 2. And this is the first calculation, or we call it the first tier unit for this course. So it talks about how to calculate the productivity. The main logic is the productivity equals to outputs divided by inputs. So your task to find the productivity ratio is you need to figure out what outputs are and what inputs are. In general, if you consider all the inputs, then this is what we call total productivity. So the total productivity we measures the outputs to all the inputs. And we also have other two. So sometimes like we only want to focus on labor. Sometimes we only want to focus on the capital. Sometimes we feel, okay, the other expenses like the environmental expenses are really important for us. We want to figure out the productivity of that part. Then we only consider a single input here. We only compare the outputs to a single input. This is what we call the partial productivity. And the multi-factor productivity means like we consider not all, but a group of them. So this is what we have, like group of the inputs. We consider both labor and materials. We consider both labor and capital. So this is what we call the multi-factor. And here is some like the measures like you can consider about like in terms of the productivity ratio here. For example, the restaurants, you probably need measure like the customers per labor hours. For the paper mill, you consider the tons of paper per cord of the wood, so the materials you use. So it's kind of like the examples about the measures of productivity. And this is examples for the textbook. So if we want to find the total productivity, we just use the total output to total input. So the total output will be like the total money you spend on the total output will be like the total money you earn for like what you produce, like the finished units, work in process, and the parts. So you just sum all of them together, then you got a total output here. And the total input is like how much you spend on labor, how much you spend on materials, how much you spend on capital, energy, and others. So you just also sum all of them together, then you got the total input. So if you are calculating the total productivity, here we go. So we just use the outputs to inputs. So we got 0.89. In 0.89, this is the number, this is the result. And what kind of conclusions you get for it? You may need to, the productivity ratio is actually a comparison result. So you need to compare with other numbers to make sure you get some ideas about how it is. So for this problem, we may feel, okay, you spend more rather than you earn. So we can get that rough idea about, okay, it's not good because it's kind of like you lose money. But if you compare with the past, like the productivity, like last year is 0.7, then you probably will feel, okay, you make an improvement this year. Or you can compare with the benchmarking. So the benchmarking in the industry, you find the benchmarking is only 0.6 and you can do 0.89. You're good. You're doing a really great job. Even like you are still losing money. So the productivity ratio is something like you need to compare it with other numbers. As well as like for the partial or the multi-factor, so if you consider like both neighbor and matures, the output doesn't change, but you only focus on the neighbor and matures. You just only sum these two together and then you go for 4.28. And for the neighbor and matures, you got 3.70. So those numbers, they don't give you any conclusions here. You still need to compare. You cannot say like the productivity for neighbor matures is higher than neighbor plus the stuffs over there. It's just like you probably need to compare with the other numbers, like the same productivity measures over there. And if you only consider energy or neighbor, here we go. So this is how we calculate the productivity. The main logic is really super simple and straightforward. Of the main logic is you just need to figure out the outputs and the inputs. Okay. So this is kind of the examples. And these two things here, even they both of them consider like the neighbor and the matures, but one of the outputs is about like how much you earn in total, and one of them is we only focus on the finished units, which is not the in-process parts or the materials. It's just like we want to figure out, okay, based on the neighbors we and the materials we spent, here is the finished goods we can deliver to customer directly. So it's the 10,000 units here, or the $10,000. This is the different for these two. Okay. And except for the examples for the textbook, I also provide you a more examples here, so you can try to do that first. Then you can compare your answers with the results here provided to you. And for this problem, it's actually asks you to calculate the multi-factor, so it's not only partial. So you may need to consider all the inputs here. And the inputs is super straightforward. It's kind of labor cost and the materials cost and overhead cost. But for the output, so what do you earn for this cost? Except for the tuition, 150 per credit hour, you also get some supplements for the states, which is 100. So the total output will be 150 plus 100, because this is per credit hour, and for this course is 3 credits per times with 50. So this is the total output, and this is all the inputs, and then the productivity is output to input, so which is 1.25. Again, we cannot say 1.25 is good or not. We still need to compare this number with others with the productivity ratio for this course in the past or in the benchmarking. And the second one is here to ask you to only focus on neighbors. So this is what we call partial productivity. Then you just use the output to the total hours, the neighbor hours, which is 224. So you got the answers here. So this is how we calculate the productivity ratio. So briefly speaking, any productivity, you just need to figure out the outputs and the inputs. And you measure the outputs to the inputs is your productivity ratio. And if you want to get some conclusions for the results you have, you need to do some comparisons. You need to compare it with what you did in the past or what the benchmarking did in the same industries you're in. And except for these two examples, I also have a practices for you. So you can try to do the practice here and then compare your answers with the PowerPoint slides, then if you figure this out, you will be really fine, like with the homework exercise for chapter 2. So this is all the contents for chapter 2.